Hello again and welcome. God bless you and namaste. Thank you guys for joining once again with us here on Him and Her TalkSpace with me, your Him host with the most, C.Harrison, Master Life Coach, and as always, my equally fantastic, her co-host. Take it away.
Nini Window. Thank you for joining.
All right. So today we have we're kind of dipping back into our relationship. As you guys know, we like to talk about subjects that are impactful to the Black community. And it's not to say that some of them are exclusive. Of course, we like doing exclusive stuff, but we also like talking about things from a Black community-centered perspective that may apply to everybody. So, in this case, this week we decided to open the space up to what you encounter and how you navigate relationship spaces where the love or the affection has kind of like died down or gone away or things of that nature. And what are some steps that we can do as far as handling it while it's happening, and also talking about it while talking about it as far as like, you know, a solution to it, whether it's not to stay together or to get apart or to, you know, go apart, depending on what it is. So really just getting more into detail about what it is, of course, what it's not, and what to do about it in either case. So as always, saying a wonderful hello to all of our people in the space, what I like to call our space aces. Wonderful to have you guys. For those who are new to the channel, for those of you who are returning, welcome to both of you. And we're just going to jump right into it. So, first piece of business when it comes to this, when you hear that notion of falling out of love or having the love kind of like fade to the background, and it just seems like it doesn't seem as intense, or it doesn't seem as consistent, or it doesn't, for whatever reason, you know. What are some of those signs? And we know that there's different signs for everybody. That's why we're opening up the space to it. So first piece, what are some signs of love faltering in the relationship? All right, we're just going to open it up. Mic's out, mic's open. Chat's being monitored. So what do you guys in the space have? What are some signs of love faltering in the relationship? What you got?
Communication. There's always a change. I think that's one of the number one signs is a change in communication. You know, at some point in the beginning, during the honeymoon stage, you know, everything was going so well, and then you begin to drift apart, and as you're drifting apart, you just, you know, the communication is not really there. There's attitude at times. You're not having the same desire to do the things that you used to do before. You know, going on a date, spending quality time together, which is the same thing as dating. You know, going out on dates, just spending that quality time together.
Okay, so a change in dynamics. You know? Yeah. Okay, change communication, change dynamics. We got somebody in chat saying a sense of distance. I think that's a good one. That's a good one. Maybe no physical connection or intimacy. Maybe a change in that, where it goes down. I think that's cool. Anybody else? These are all good. These are all solid. What are some other? Other?
Oh, respect too. Then you start to lose respect for one another.
Ooh. Okay, so maybe there's more. Maybe there's more like negative energy in the relationship happening.
Yeah. You know, used to open the door for me, and once upon a time, I'm not saying me, but just not the things you used to do. Those type of things. It's just like you, right? It's no longer needed. You don't do those things anymore, or the way in which you talk to a person. You know, that self of your respect, you know, just dwindles away.
All right, that's solid. That's very solid. Anybody else got anything to chime in on that with?
This is a good topic. I like this.
Oh, yeah. You ain't playing with it either. She was like, I have several. Thank you.
If no one else has anything, I was going to say, just to piggyback off of what Faye said, was the little things. So the compliments, where you used to get compliments all the time, or you used to get gifts out of the blue all the time, or just the, you know, even not even the quality time of going on dates, but even when you're in the same room doing nothing, but you want to be around that person. And that, you know, that's when you're now in a separate room, or, you know, you don't come home as, you know, as quickly from work that you know, when you used to, or whatever. So all of those little things as well.
Yeah. I would say another really strong one is when you find yourself, and this requires you kind of like paying attention to yourself, when you find yourself wanting or finding reasons to not be around.
Yeah.
You know, you want to stay at work longer because you don't want to go home. Because you know that feeling is waiting for you. That feeling of like, oh man.
Yeah.
You know,
like,
stuff like that. You might find them, and I'm definitely guilty of this one. You find yourself wanting to do more errands outside the house just to get out the house.
Yeah.
Like, I will go every single time to the supermarket, and you will take your damn time at the supermarket. I've done it. I will sit there and mull over 6 different brands of spaghetti sauce just to give me 5 extra minutes. Real talk. Zero reservations. I've done it.
Right.
I have absolutely done it. And then they come back, why do you take so long? They didn't have the brand you was looking for. I went all over the store. Right. But yeah, I've definitely been in that space. All right. So yeah, sense of distance, lack of loss or reduction of communication.
Resentment.
Yeah. Did you write down a list?
It's just flowing. It's there.
She is like point to the fourth. But no, it's dead on. The resentment, growing bitterness.
Yeah.
And that one always kind of bugs me. Not to say that it's easy to kind of pull the trigger on just stop the relationship, because you might be at a point in the relationship where it is hard, where it's like you're very much intertwined with each other, like something like that, or something like long term, where it's like it's not in like a year or two, but it's like 5 or 6 years, you know. So it's not to say that it's easy to leave, but when you see that happening and you don't pump the brakes, it makes me wonder, you know, what is it that goes through some people's heads when they start seeing it. So yeah, that's a solid one. That's a solid one. So we have all of those. Anybody else got anything that they want to add?
Did we miss anything
that they want to piggyback off of?
I'd like to say something, Chad. Just piggybacking off what you said. How do you pump the brakes if nobody's being honest?
Shit. You can't.
Exactly.
You can't. Or
no one wants to speak up, say anything.
You either don't and you suffer from the buildup. That's a really excellent question. You either don't and you suffer from the buildup because you're not being honest, or you find an alternative outlet to let off that steam.
So that leads to other things, right? Exactly.
You know, they'd rather, put a Band-Aid on that gunshot wound, so to speak, rather than actually address the wound. I think, and part of the major part of addressing that wound is having to be honest. Hey, I'm not happy. I'm not even sure why I'm not happy. You know, or maybe you're exactly sure of why you're not happy. You have to say stuff like that. You have to say these things. When you see them, and as soon as you see that is not going away, and this is why I prefaced what I started saying with, you have to have a really good eye on yourself. Like, you have to have a really good handle on you in order for you to be able to be like, okay, something's off. So we could talk about these signs, but if you're not even giving yourself that sense of awareness to have that, you know, to see the signs, and that was actually part of what I did. I did not pay attention to the red flags, and there were many, and they were early, and I either didn't pay attention to them, or even worse, I said to myself, "It's just a phase. It's just a phase." You know, it wasn't a fucking phase. It was the issue.
And I can say, like, even with when I was married, it wasn't that I ignored the red signs, red flags. It was that I brushed them under the rug because I thought it was going to get better over time. So it was like, okay, I see the red flags, I'll brush it under the rug. And then that hump started getting bigger and bigger, where I could no longer hide all the red flags under the hump. But it was kind of like, you can tell that, it, you know, all those things, the lack of intimacy, the lack of quality time, all those things were slipping away. And as opposed to me addressing them, it was like, it's a phase, it'll go away. I see it, but it's a phase, it'll go away. So I think that's important too, is to, and go back to what Faye was saying, is when you notice those things, the communication and all that, you know, pay attention to it and address it.
Yeah, all of that. So, yeah, excellent question, Ray, on that one. Yeah, part of being able to even talk about these signs is the ability to see them. You can't talk about what you don't see. You can't talk about what you're not aware of. So part of even having these signs is being able to see them when they come up in the relationship, and dare I say, even taking the extra step to track them back to their source. You know, did you start feeling resentment once, you know, he went 2 or 3 times without opening your car door, and you felt like, you know, something's falling away? Did you start looking at her some type of way when you overheard her talking to her girlfriends about the relationship, and you thought things were going well, and then you heard her saying things were off? Now you're like, oh, why wouldn't she come to me and say something? So it's those types of things that you have to kind of like, you know, do, not just see, but also address as far as those signs. Going into the which actually goes into the next point that we had. What are some alternative options to addressing it? What can we do to address those things once we see them? Anything, and that can really be anything. Nothing is off the table, you know, as far as you guys' ideas. So, what do you have for us in terms of ways to address it?
Couples counseling.
All right.
That's one direction to do it. If you're not able to do it on your own, you know, because sometimes you may need that mediator, because the other person may not feel comfortable talking, or because I feel like it's the maturity level of 2 individuals coming together, like the young lady said, both acknowledging that there is an issue. One may acknowledge that is a problem, and the other person may see that it's really no issue for them, but the issue is with that person. And then it's like, you don't want to you want to pick your battles. You don't want to nitpick either. So you want to, whatever is like major or maybe causing really a problem between both of you, you know?
Yes.
Because even I'm gonna just say, like, women versus the males, we may see it as a problem, but sometimes the man doesn't. Like, they cool with it. It's like, you know, they don't want to be stressed out, you know, with what they may think is nonsense. So it really depends on the individual sometimes, or they probably just don't want, and just to avoid conflict. But the proper thing would be to do is to address it, to avoid everything.
Absolutely. that avoiding conflict thing is that feels. I think that's the same as being dishonest. Ms. Barr, you had something to add.
Sure. I think it's actually a good idea to have check-ins. I think rather than wait until it gets to the point where you even need to go to counseling, just set up check-ins. It could be daily, it could be weekly. Set up 15 minutes and just talk. And even sometimes if you don't think anything's going on, you might be surprised if you give yourself a safe space with ground rules to just talk about things, what might come up.
Okay. I'm with that. I'm definitely with that. That's the major one. I think the last relationship I was in, we had months. We did months. Yeah. Monthly check-ins just to see what was happening over the last month or so. And you know what? I think that's part of why it went down the way it did is because we actually started not doing it, and then something got in there and it wasn't addressed, and then it got to the point where it was like, okay, so this is an issue, and it's a big enough issue that we don't need to continue.
Yeah,
you know?
for
So
sure.
that is a very solid one. So counseling, if you can't handle it on your own, check-ins if you can. What else do we have? Books. We have books. You know, figuring out what's we are in this age of information where there's all types of books and articles and so on and so forth. That can kind of fall under both the counseling and the self-check-in thing because they can be supplementary to it. You know, you want to find a book on dealing with resentment, or dealing with bitterness, or dealing with the lack of intimacy. I got a ton of them. But yeah, so you have that one. What else do we have in the space in terms of solutions? What y'all got?
I have a question. Raise your hand, and there's a little icon at the bottom of your screen, or somewhere if you're on your phone or your laptop. If everyone in here knows their love language. If you know your love language, raise your hand. Okay.
Where's my hand? Okay, there it is.
I'll give it a couple of seconds. If you know your love language, raise your hand. Okay.
Okay.
I think that is very telling. I think that's very telling. I think the fact that, because everyone, and I learned this a few years ago, everyone has their love language. And what that love language is a language that tells the other person how to love you, as well as how you kind of react to people and the things that people do. For example, I'm not a gift person. So 9 times out of 10, if you give me a gift, but if you spend time with me, I'm going to accept that more than if you're giving me a gift. So one of my love languages is quality time. So if I meet a person who's constantly giving me gifts because their love language is gifts, I'm not going to recognize that as being loved a certain way, but not knowing that his love language is gifts, now I know that this is his way of showing me that he does love me. So I think without that understanding and that dynamic, that's very important to know. Also, that love language can be carried over. And I learned this from Chad, because if you don't know, I hired Chad early on as my business coach when I launched my business, that the way that you love and your relationships are all your relationships. So if you are a quality time person in your intimate relationships, 9 times out of 10, or more than likely, you're a quality time person with your children. You're a quality time person as a coworker. You're a quality time person as a friend. So I think it's very important, if you don't know your love language, to learn those love languages. I'm going to put the link in the comment section. Also, your language on how you argue. Like, what's your argue? How do you argue? Me. If I'm mad at you, don't talk to me. I don't want anything to say. I don't want you to be in the same room with me. I don't want you to touch me. Give me a couple of minutes. let me calm down, and then we can come back and have that conversation. But if my intimate partner, my romantic partner, or my friend or my sister wants to constantly come at me, it's not going to sink in, because that's not my language. That's not my argument language. That's not my, my language. So I think knowing those things about yourself is very important. Again, I'm going to put the link in the comment section on your time, your leisure time. Take the test, learn that out, and I think that's one of the things that you can do to help that out. If you guys find yourself falling apart or going separate from each other, maybe take that love language and see what's missing. Maybe I'm not speaking your language. So that's just one thing, or a big thing, I think.
No, it definitely is. I'm laughing because I remember when we first had that conversation, I was like, when I'm upset, I would like for you to you can be mad, but don't bounce out the roof, unless you really feel like you have to. And if so, please say something, along that. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
What is it? Oh, man. Who fat face Judy?
I'm fat.
Oh, shit. Okay, then. But yeah, and what's really cool about that, shout out to the author of the Pop-Up Languages, which is, I believe, Rick Warren. The book came out about
Gary Chapman.
Gary Chapman. I'm sorry, Rick Warren did Purpose Driven Life. I'm sorry.
Yep.
But shout out to Gary Chapman for that book. It came out a little more than 20 years ago. I take the test every year just to double check. And what's so funny is my results never change. It's the same. It is the same
Really?
score. It's damn near the same score, same order. Physical touch first.
Yeah.
Words of affirmation second. Quality time third. Acts of service fourth. And but I do know a lot of people whose results do change.
Yeah.
Year to year. Sometimes the scores are in the same. The scores are in the same order, but the intensity of each one has changed. Sometimes some of them flip. I've seen people whose whole scores have reversed. Over a year or two. And I say all that to say, who you start with ain't always who you finish with. We're all here trying to figure ourselves out and stuff like that. And you catch us at a point when it comes into relationships. You catch people at a point where they're at, and they have an understanding of themselves, and they have this perception of how they should move and how they should function and so on and so forth. But ideally, if they are growing, there's more stuff that they're going to find out about themselves, which may change how their viewpoint of how they address things, or how they love, or how they like to be loved, and so on and so forth. So being proactive and being conscious of that, and really taking moments like that to address them, and just see where you're at, because unfortunately a lot of people end up on relationship autopilot, where they feel like the person that they start with is always going to be that person, and that's just not the case. For many of us, we find out new things and we adjust, and sometimes those adjustments have us moving in a different way than relationship-wise than when we started. So being able to get in front of that is damn important. Just to have that information and know if that's something that you want to continue with, or something that you even can continue with. Sometimes people change to a point where there's not even enough alignment. You can respect it. You can love them for the change, and I'm speaking ideally, of course. You can respect it and you can love them for the change, but it may not be something that you can continue in on that level. So maybe you guys take a step back. Case in point, understanding in my marriage, what I understood when I began understanding more so who I was and seeing her for who she was, I realized that trying to love each other on a husband and wife tip was not good. It wasn't good. Are we friends now? Yes. But we sucked. Terrible. terrible. And I'm saying that taking full accountability for everything that I did on my end. Well, I'll speak for myself, but yeah, and that's one of those things. So between letting go of the naivete, letting go of the short-sightedness as far as looking at the red flags, and then also paying more attention to who I was able to then make a decision and say, you know what, 13 years and 2 kids in, we can stop hurting each other now. And that's just what it is. It's just what it is. So those are all definitely wonderful tools to address it. Self-check-ins, definitely an advocate for that. Therapy, if you really must do it, absolutely. We have life coaches around that can help you with that. And
I want to say one thing that I can think of when you were talking is also, I think an alternative thing is when you see that happening, is to also take a step back. I am a fan for friendships, right? Relationships are built off of friendships. And if you aren't friends with your intimate partner, that foundation will crumble. So I think taking a step back and going back and developing that friendship is very important, because somewhere along the line, like my thing is, if you wouldn't if you think about your friendships now, you wouldn't necessarily, you'll talk, if your friend hurt your feelings, you're gonna like, you know what, such you hurt my feelings, and I didn't like when you did this, and I didn't like when you did that. We're gonna go have a martini, get it over with, and we're gonna smooch it over. But it's not as easy sometimes in intimate relationships, because there is that extra layer of of relationship. So I think when you get back, like scale back and go back to being friends, or learn how to be friends, I think that's also very important. Because my thing is, if you're in a relationship and you're not friends with your partner, that's a problem. That's a problem. You have to be friends, and that if that's not there, it will crumble. It will definitely crumble.
Yeah. I think that's a pretty regular thing that happens.
Yeah.
Y'all get caught up in on that whole love and intimacy and romance aspect.
The flowers and all that good stuff.
And you neglect that option of just liking them. And just enjoying their company. Always, I like to tell people, like, you got to be with somebody that you like and you love. And people are like, well, the same thing. And I'm like, oh, au contraire, my dude. No, it's not. Liking somebody means, like, even if y'all aren't doing anything lovey-dovey or romantic, you enjoy their damn company. You can have conversations with them. Y'all have that level of openness, and that is not even a gender-specific thing. And I wanted to make that point. Both men and women lose that aspect. Men get caught up. On worst-case scenario, men get caught up in a woman's attraction and forget that she's a woman, and this is somebody that you want to get to know, and they get. It's almost like the ends justify the means, where it's like, well, I just want to get to this end goal. I want to get to this end goal. And part of getting to that end goal in a solid way means actually getting to know them. You have a lot of men that lose that on the path to getting to where they want to get to, which is like, oh my goodness, she's so, oh my gosh, she's so good, I just want to get her. Look, and then you have a lot of women that are scared to go to that point. So speaking from my experience, don't y'all get me? No. But from my experience, you have a lot of women that are scared to go to that point, maybe because they were vulnerable in the past, and it was used as ammunition against them, or it wasn't met on the same level of intensity, and so on and so forth. And then they are conditioned to not put that out there, which is crazy, because then if you come across somebody who is willing to go to that point, now you're like, no, it's vulnerability, and that's part of the other problem, and that's where honestly I think a lot of us miss each other, in that regard. Because we're just we mean, I think a lot of us mean well, but there's also that work that has to be done in order for your well-meaning to be in alignment with your well-doing, for yourself and for this person that you say you want to get to know and that you want to spend time with and ultimately want to be, connected with on that level. So you have that as well. You definitely have that as well. Now, next one is actually kind of a...
I know I'm talking a lot. I'm sorry. I just have one more thing, because I think everything that we're saying is very important. And as we're talking, I'm thinking of more alternative things. I think it's very important to know or to learn that when the love is gone, obviously at some point you guys were together for a while, right? At whatever that while is, year, 2 years, 5 years, 20 years, 8, whatever. And the person that you met when you were 40 years old, or let's say the person that you met when you were 20 years old is not the same person at 50, right? And I think those monthly check-ins or those weekly check-ins or however those check-ins are, like how often they are, that with that check-in comes the relearning of that person. So you have to relearn. So my mindset at 20, and anyone on here, your mindset at 20 is completely different than your mindset at 40. Right? Because things happen, experiences happen, life happens. So I think to also not only to build that foundation of friendship, and then I'm going to shut up, but build that foundation of friendship, but to also to relearn the person. Sometimes you have to relearn the person. 20 years later, that's not the same person that you met in high school. That's not the same person that you met in a bar at the beach or something at 25. This person, life happened. So I think with that comes communication, with that comes friendship, with that also comes relearning the person that you were introduced to in the beginning. I'm done. I'll shut up.
You're the host. You can't shut up.
Well, I'll shut up a little bit. I like to hear other people talk. I don't like to talk.
You can't shut up. Keep funny. Ray, what you got?
I think you all make wonderful points, and it's all accurate. But that is true. How do you explain people who have been together for 30, 40, 50 years? Do they constantly check in with each other?
I think so.
I would believe so. I would hope so. Otherwise, that's just cruel and unusual punishment.
Just like they say, you never stop dating the person that you're married to. And that dating could be your weekly check-in. If that could be, on a date at the restaurant talking about something. But I think just as important as it is to continue to date the person, the check-ins are just as important. Absolutely. Because people change, things change, lives, dreams, hopes, all that stuff changes over time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that depends on the person and the people in their relationship, because I know for my parents, they were married 58, going on 59 years when my mom passed. That was never the case. Was no checking in. Mm-hmm. And my uncle, my grandparents, same on all of those marriages would lasted more than 50 years. They never did no checking in.
But how do you know they didn't check in? Maybe they checked in at night when they were laying in the bed on their pillows.
No, my dad was already asleep because my dad had to get up 5 o'clock in the morning most oftentimes. So that never was the case. Like, I think relationships nowadays, they try to figure out ways to help them to last, or people that are in them try to figure out ways, but there is no way that can work other than just trying to put in the time to make it work. Like I said, I never saw that, but I just try to do what I think is best for me and Cook as far as our relationship, and we try to work together. It gets hard sometimes because then you start to throw in work, you may have long hours, you start to throw in kids, and you start to throw in other things. It gets very difficult after a while, especially when you've been together for 20, 30, 40 years. I guess you can say it's called getting comfortable, but the dynamics of things change. It just doesn't, it's not going to remain the same. It's just not.
get that. Yeah, I think that's true. For some people, that is their dynamic. Keisha, what you got? Keisha, Britt.
Sorry, I got it. I'm sorry. I kind of want to piggyback off of what Nene said and then what Eric said. So I think it's important. I think it was Marcia that said, or Marcia, I'm sorry, that said checking in. I think that what Eric is saying is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that over time, all these things start to pile in on you. Like when you're young or first married and no kids and your responsibilities look different, you probably can set aside that time outside of work to spend the quality time that is needed to continue to foster a healthy marriage. And then you start to add in the children and you have play dates and just the heaviness of work, and depending on what your work responsibilities are, and then the additional responsibilities of being a parent. And then what happens is sometimes you can lose yourself, and like just not even within your marriage, but like your individual self. And that's why it's so important, like Marcia said, in terms of like checking in, it's important to have those conversations. And I think Nene made a good point when she said that, the person that everybody should be changing. Now, I'm not saying like a drastic change, but change is a part of maturity. Mm-hmm. So as when you marry someone, especially if you marry them very young or whatever, you marry someone, you're 20, 22 years old, and now you're 45, that relationship is going to look a little bit different. I remember my mother-in-law, I spoke to her one time about how she and my father-in-law stayed together for so long. And I thought she was going to say like, oh, we were so in love, we were madly in love. That continued from the time, and they got married when they were young. I think she was like 16 or 17 and he was like 23 or something. And she said, no, she said, we had a commitment to remain together, a commitment to our family, a commitment to our children, and I think that's very important. I think somebody said like love, it like fizzles out. You have to try at least to, anything that you want to develop and grow, you have to put the work in. Think about it like at work. You want to learn a new skill, something that you may not be, familiar with. You have to put in the time to develop that skill. Anything like athletes, when they want to become the best, think about Michael Jordan. He said that, he would play during the summer when his friends were all out having a good time because he was focused. I think when you don't put in the time with certain things, and especially your relationship, yes, over time people change and things change, but you have to be willing to put in the time and the effort to help your marriage grow. And then also acknowledging the role that you play in that change. It could just be a natural progression. It could just be, like Nene said, sometimes your desires change from 20 to 45, but, your kids are not doing good in school. You're not going to just say, well, that's just what happens. No, you're going to figure out why it is that my kid is not doing good in school. I don't know if this is a good example. And then you're going to put forth the effort, whether it's tutoring or, asking for extra work or a Saturday class or an enrichment program so that your child is practicing in whichever subject that they're not doing well in. So I just feel like it's easy to say, oh, life is, you have to set aside that date time. I think somebody said that, like dating each other. I hear that all the time. We have to date each other. We have to find, even if it's, every Tuesday, we're going to have, after we put the kids down, we're going to have ourselves like a little sip of wine, and we're just going to do that check-in, like Marcia said, or we're going to sit down and we're going to watch a movie or something. That's quality time. It's easy to throw your hand up and just say, well, it may not be here anymore. Let's find ways. What made you giggle before? Why was my heart palpitating when I would see you, or my stomach had butterflies before? You can get that stuff back. You can't tell me that somebody's been married for 40, 50, 60 years. Maybe some people already have always, they're very blessed. They've always felt a particular way about their spouse. Maybe others of us have to really work not work in a bad way, like, let me just try to find something I like about him. No, like, what made me feel you before? Was it when you touched the back of my neck or came up behind me and just like hugged me, and maybe that turned me on for the rest of the week? You know, doing things like sending like little text messages like, I'm gonna tear you up when I get home, like things like that. It could be different for each person, but you still have to put in the work and the time.
I agree.
Okay. Keisha over here setting us up for an erotic novel. Maybe it was the way you kissed my neck.
Walking up behind
Maybe it was the way that you hugged me as I was cooking dinner. That would turn me on for the rest of the week. My God. But, okay.
We have Britt and then we have Ray.
Shoot. Go ahead, Britt.
Oh, wow. Like, I don't know what to say. I just feel like right now, this feels like when you go MIA for church because life smacks you in the face, and then you come back after being MIA, and then you just like, yes, Pastor, like, yes, Jesus, like, yeah, oh my gosh, you guys are just saying so many thoughtful and deep things, and I really appreciate it. And I mean, I do agree with Nini. I do like hearing both different sides. I do appreciate what Eric said, because I agree, you know, with certain relationships like that, you know, whether they've been together for years, I feel like nowadays when someone sees that, they don't feel like it's possible. It's just like, how do you keep it going? I just truly feel that if you love someone, you will compensate, you will make sacrifices. Of course, if it's negative or toxic, then sure, don't do that. Remove yourself from that situation completely. But overall, you know, it's a relationship, you know, not every day you're gonna wake up and just be like, damn, you so fine. Like, sometimes it's just like, oh, like, it's this shit again. Like, you know, sometimes it does feel tired out, or that the fire is fading. But I just feel like if it's the simple things, like, just no matter how hard it is, you know, besides couples counseling and podcasts and books, I think it's really important to just sit down and to just listen to what your partner is saying. I mean, because some relationships completely fail because either party, or whatever the amount of parties, feel that they're not being heard. And when that happens, and when it happens repeatedly, that's literally disaster.
Could not say it, but could not have said it better.
I agree.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Ray?
Oh, that was wonderful. Thanks for that. But I want to add on to what the lady said before the young lady that spoke. I feel that people throw in the towel easily. They just throw in the towel at any sign of being uncomfortable in the relationship. They're just done. One argument, it's done. One misunderstanding, it's done.
Yeah.
People don't want to put in the work. Everything is work. You have to work for everything.
Yeah.
Even a relationship.
I can get that on with that.
People check out so quickly. And I feel like it's so ridiculous. What's the point in even starting anything if you don't have staying power?
I can get that on. And that's we'll make a quick point about that, and then touch on something that Eric said about the whole check-in. I think part of where we're at in terms of dealing with this is that nobody's allowed to make mistakes. It's almost like you get into this relationship, and it's an offshoot of. I'm gonna just say I feel like part of it is it's an offshoot of this cancel culture mentality that we have nowadays, where it's like, oh, you did something wrong, you're out of here. You did something wrong, you're out of here. And it's just that one shot. It's that one shot, and you can't falter. You can't have an error in judgment. You can't have a misread. or you can, but the consequence of it is, oh, you're cut off. Oh, there was a misunderstanding. Okay, I understand it, but you're out. It was an error judgment. Oh, okay, I hear you, but you're gone. You're gone. Eric, you made a mention of your parents being up there in the high 50s. My parents are 51 years in, and I just found out, I want to say maybe 10 years ago, I did not see them having check-ins, but then learned more so into my adulthood. Part of their check-in was having these conversations that sometimes went all night. Like if there was a subject that they needed to touch on, it was, okay, you're not going to sleep. I'm not going to sleep. I know you're tired. I'm tired. We both worked, but there is this issue on the table, and we're not going to sleep until we have some measure of resolve, or at least unless we directly address it at some point in time. It may not take sometimes it may not take the whole night to get to a resolve. Sometimes it has to be carried over to the next night in order for there to be a resolve. But that was something that I learned that they do, and I believe that is definitely part of what allowed them to make it to 51 years. I don't know if people have that wherewithal to do that anymore. But yeah, that's definitely part of it. You got it. I see you, Eric. Go ahead.
Yeah, like I was stating, like with my parents, their relationship was kind of quirky in a way, because like they were the type that if there was an issue, they at times would go around the house and wouldn't speak to each other for days or weeks on end. So when my older siblings it was just them, they would try to get the kids on their side. Don't talk to him, don't talk to her.
Oh, wow.
These are some of the things that I tried to get away from, because I saw a lot of things that I would take from them, and I incorporate that into, me and my marriage. But there were a whole lot of other things that I'm like, nah, you can't do it like that. Things just don't work that way. And I don't understand how they made it, but they made it work. But me and my sister will oftentimes talk about that and be like, I didn't want to be like that, or, just like a little things that happen with my siblings, because I have older siblings that there were 3 of them, and then was me and my sister. It was me and my sister. We were younger. So it kind of changed when we came along from when they were coming up, and they saw a lot more. And that was one of the main things. I mean, it carried over and it became a lot less, but those are the types of things that we grew up seeing. And I didn't want to be a part of that. Like, they didn't have date nights, and it was like, hey, vacation was pretty much non-existent. Vacation to them was like, hey, let's go visit my grandparents down in Georgia. That's vacation, and that's it.
Gotcha. I understand. I do understand the dynamic that you're talking about there. It is not entirely common, but if that's what worked for them, then hey, I get it. All right, Keisha, something to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, because those are my in-laws, I think I want to add that sometimes when you have individuals that are much older, everybody's marriage is different. So I'm not trying to dismiss what Eric is saying, because he was raised in the house with his parents. But I saw something different in my in-laws, and maybe that's because I came in a little bit later on. Like I said, I had a conversation with my mother-in-law. I watched how caring and nurturing my father-in-law was towards my mother-in-law. Like, it blew my mind. Like, I had that picture, that image painted in my mind of how he took care of her. He really cared for her, guys, when she was sick. But that was before she even got sick. Like, he was very attentive to her. Now, Eric may see that as something different. My father-in-law was a man of very few words. So I can't say that they didn't have those moments where they checked in, such as Marsha, they checked in with each other. But I'm kind of, I don't know, I just feel like they did something, because they remained together for almost, Eric said, I think it was like almost 60 years that they were together before my mother-in-law passed away. So, you know, I think sometimes we don't get to see the you know, those moments with our parents because we're kids, and as you get older, you start to start to pull out like, oh, this is probably how they did it, or we get the negative things from our parents and we pull them into our marriages and relationships, and we get the good things too. So it's just hard for me to believe that my mother and father-in-law didn't have those moments where they were checking in, like he said, no date night. Well, they had 5 kids. And my father-in-law worked in construction, and my mother-in-law was a homemaker. So I'm sure they had check-in. They had 5 kids, so they had some types of, you know, checking in with each other and, you know, seeing how each other was doing. But it's just the way that my father-in-law was with my mother-in-law. They were doing something. They were checking in and taking care. And the way she spoke about him too. My mother-in-law spoke so highly of my father-in-law. So maybe those, like I said, are things that they learned, you know, after they had all those years of walking through the house for 2 or 3 weeks and not speaking to one another, you know, because like I said before, you grow and you mature and you bring in things from, you know, your experiences growing up, you know, things that you saw into your marriage. And then as time goes on, you hopefully grow and mature and you change those things. So I just wanted to add that.
And add you did. I think that's all. I think that's solid. That's what I said in the chat. That's solid. It is. Yeah, knowing what your dynamic is and then making good on it. That's real key. That's real key. And making room for the change, making room for the growth. Super important. Not that I was doing this. Y'all know me, I'll be a research head. I didn't even intend to do this today. But I ended up watching several episodes of Fix My Life. Y'all know Yala, my sister Yala. Y'all know that way.
My auntie.
Much, huge respect. That's my auntie and so many other things in my head. For real. Only because she doesn't play.
Right.
And she's very much like, I find myself very much like her in terms of wanting to get down to the root of the matter. And then doing the work from there to establish it. And some of the episodes that I was talking about, I won't get into all the details, but she spoke a lot from you creating what you see. So for a lot of these relationship issues, you have a lot of people that are playing out, whether they're aware of it or not. And I think most people are not aware of it. Or if they are aware of it, they don't think that they can change anything about it. You have a lot of people that play out what they saw earlier in life, whether that was with their parents or the other whatever influential figures were around them. You learn in a lot of cases where you get, how to, or how you feel you need to handle situations from the people around you that are in like your formative years and stuff like that. So when it comes to love, you have a lot of people that act out on what was present, or in some cases not present, in their household growing up. For example, you have women that end up with men who are abusive because they had abusive fathers. So even though you may consciously say in your head, I don't want to go for that, it's deeper ingrained than that. So you'll almost unconsciously, and this is not everybody's case, I'm just using that as an example, you'll unconsciously draw yourself towards somebody that may end up in the long run not treating you well, because that's something that hasn't been addressed. How do we take the time to address those things? Again, this goes back to having the wherewithal to be able to say, is how I'm operating, or is what I believe to be my standards, is that really what I need it to be? Not just going off of not just going on autopilot and being like, well, this is what's in front of me, and this is what I have to offer, or this is what I feel I deserve, or whatever number of things, internal narratives you say to yourself. But taking that time to be like, okay, how do I really love? How do I really want to be How do I handle conflict? What do I do with resentment? What do I do about bitterness? And you start from there, which is actually what I'm going to start segueing into the last two segments that we had. When it comes to looking at the signs, right? We've talked about looking at the signs. We've talked about certain ways that we can address it, and I'm splitting the coin like I like to do in the last point. You've done those steps, and let's say having done all that, you two realize that in looking at the signs for why love seems to be shaky, or the intimacy seems to be shaky, or communication seems to be shaky, or all of it. After looking at all that, you realize that there's something worth saving. What are some possible steps that we can take to go towards the saving of it? And then I'll flip the coin at the end. But what are some steps we can take that go towards saving once we have recognized the signs, once we seen what options we have as far as addressing it? What happens next? Hands up. We got hands up. We got mics down. We got mutes off. Keisha, then Marcia.
Marcia can go because I've been talking, and she hasn't said much. It's fine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've been listening a lot to what everyone has to say, but I would say something that's very important in saving anything is acknowledging what's working. So the same way we were already talking about check-ins and communicating with each other, if something is improving, then make sure to say it and let the person know what they're doing right so they continue to do it. And just also express if it is something that's really important, just say that. I would just say that's where total honesty about what's working is just as important about what's not working as well.
I agree.
That's huge. That is huge. That's really huge. Marcia coming through with the one shot. She's like, bow. Talk about what's good. I'm done. But no, you are absolutely right. I think part of, I definitely agree with you 100%. Part of needing to do maintenance is also talking about the things that ain't broke. Because tackling what's wrong is great, but also, we're not machines. So also acknowledging what is working. I think that can go a long way in terms of the overall, process of addressing it. Why? Because you don't need people walking away feeling like I just do everything wrong, and every time we talk, it's about something wrong. Being able to talk about what's right, being able to talk about the things that are still a solid part of our foundation that make you want to continue. Absolutely. Somebody else had a hand up and then took it down.
Keisha?
Yes. Go ahead, Keisha.
I think, thank you. I think Rainisha, I think I'm pronouncing her name correctly, said it earlier when she said, how can you know, and it kind of piggybacks off of what Marcia just said, how can you move forward, or how can you correct something that's not right if you don't have a conversation about it? And what I think is that a lot of times people do not want to offend the other person. And sometimes, being transparent and being, open about what you need and what you want, and like Marcia said, and what you like and what is working, that's the key to moving forward. If you don't communicate what you need, or what's going good or what's not going good, how can you change anything? You have to open your mouth and communicate what it is that you want. It may be something in the lines of, you're working too much. A conversation needs to occur about, listen, I know you have to work, but is it a way that you can? I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be transparent. With my job, I was working a lot. And my husband had to say to me, look, you're spending a lot of time outside of the house. Is there a way that you can, do some things? So what I did was and it worked for a while. It's just the nature of the job. You work a lot. I said, listen, on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Fridays, I'm not working late, unless it's a dire emergency. And then that lasts for a while. And then I said, out of the month, I'm only working 4 days late. I'm really going to crunch my schedule and figure out how I can do that. And that worked for a while. Because we make concessions and everything for work, but what about when your family life is falling by the wayside and you see it and you're trying to stay on top of work and do well in work? Like, what's more important? Like, I have to work, but my family is there even when this job is gone. So just having a conversation. And then when it comes to intimacy, I think that that's a very delicate, topic, even as a married couple. I think somebody mentioned like doing certain things or liking certain things, and you just have to be honest. Like Nene said, like your spouse should be your best friend. But I think a lot of people get married because they're excited about just the thought, the fairy tale of being married, and so that started it off the wrong way anyway. Just because you've been with someone and dating someone for a certain amount of time, you would think the next step is marriage, but that may not necessarily be what is the next step for you two. Mm-hmm. For somebody else, it could have been like, we were dating for a year, we know we're in love, we want to get married. For someone else, it may be, it's some things I'm seeing about this person I'm not really, checking it, buying into, and maybe we need a little bit more time to court because we're so big on what everybody else thinks we should do. That's what we have to get out of the habit of doing, is trying to put up this facade and for everyone else. Because at the end of the day, when your marriage is falling apart and you're divorced and crying and your family is broken up, don't nobody care, because they're gonna talk about that too. So I just think like having a conversation about, this is the last thing, guys. I watched this series. It's called Black Love, and there was a topic on intimacy. And one thing that stuck out to me, at first I kind of chuckled. There was a couple that said they had to schedule their intimacy time. And I was like, scheduling an intimacy time? Like, how are you gonna do that? They said they had 3 kids. It just wasn't working. He was working outside of the home. She had been working outside of the home. And I think she was a stay-at-home mom at the time. And they just didn't have time. I think they had like 3 kids that were between the ages of 1 and like 4. Like, those are little babies. When you're trying to do the ooch, whatever you want to call it. What time do you have? Like, be honest about that. I just don't have the time. And guess what? When I have the time, I'm so daggone tired that the ooch don't want to cooch. Let's just be honest about that. And so how are we going to figure out what works for us? What works for Nene and her relationship? Great. You talking to your girlfriend sometimes without being too open about things could be a way, or reading a book or reading an article. What works for Chad and his significant other may not work for us. But me scheduling in every Tuesday at 5:30 while the kids are sitting out eating, we're gonna run downstairs in this laundry room and we're gonna do the ooch. And so we can kind of find our own groove. There's nothing wrong with that, because guess what? Doing the ooch at 5:30 when the kids are sitting out eating may be what saves your marriage. So I'm gonna do the ooch at 5:30 in my laundry room. That's it.
I'm with it. I'm all the way.
All right, we have Britt and then we have Tanisha.
Oh, girl. I got something to say. Lakeisha was spinning them back. Oh my God. I just think that, I honestly, I'm not surprised. I mean, this is really, really weird. I mean, I feel like I'm a different perspective. I don't know what everyone ages in this chat, and I know I'm 21, so I'm just like, wait, what's going on? But the fact is that, as a couple, people do schedule intimacy. There's nothing wrong about it. Like, how are you gonna watch all the kids do this? Sometimes the punani just needs something. You just need something. So I just feel like that's really great, because I feel like that's truth. I do feel like I do respect that even as adults, when you're younger, it's just there are times when you're shy, but you're still open with it. But when you're an adult, you can see that it's still it's shunned, or it's hard to talk about, you know, and it should be something like, you know, that's free, and, you know, like, you know, yeah, grown people, you know, like, you know, if you gotta spice it up, you know, you gotta spice it up. If you gotta like use the vibe or the whatever, like whatever y'all want.
Right.
So I just think it's really, I thought what Lakeisha said was honestly amazing, because you're right, that's true. Everyone's just like, oh, I'm married, like you're my boo forever. No, it doesn't work that way. I see so many couples who, you know, who are just girlfriend and boyfriend. They've been like that for years and years, and they know they don't have to put a ring on it. They know they don't have to put a title. It's just like, if you're in love and you want to take that next step, yes, but I feel like so many people don't think about that next step. And it's a really scary thought. I mean, personally, you know, just being the age I am now, it's really scary, because it's just like, you know, let's say if, you know, just the average person who's like my age or even younger, you miss one link up or one possible date, it's like, oh, you dry, oh, you ghosted me. Hello, like, my mom, like, God forbid, someone I cared about or my friend could have been in an accident. You don't freaking know you're gonna call me dry because I had something to do or something came up. And it's not fair. I just feel like overall there's no time, there's no thought, like, oh, let me imagine myself in this person's shoes. Like, you don't know what someone is going through. So I just feel like communication is key, and it's very good to talk about what you're feeling and how you're feeling. You know, we're not sidekicks, you know, we don't have superpowers. You know, I know that everyone has that one friend in their group that's just like, girl, I'm a psychic, he gonna leave you tomorrow. Like, it don't work that way. I feel that overall, you know, whether you're adult, young adult, teen, that you should be open, and it's okay to be open, because there's a lot of things that's not talked about that should be talked about, and it's just really sad that it's not being talked about. So I appreciate spaces like these, because it gives us a chance to talk about it. Like, okay, sure, if you don't want to blast your business about this and so happened at this such and time in my house, okay, cool, that's fine. But just getting together and just realizing that, like, hey, we're all humans and we're going through something no matter what. Us talking like this brings us closer, because we know that we're not alone.
Absolutely.
I appreciate you bringing those two major notions of openness and empathy.
Yeah.
To the conversation, and also for your unique perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
On it.
Thank you.
Very
You're welcome, guys. You're welcome. You know I got y'all. Like.
Yes. All right. Lakeisha.
So we have Tanisha. It was Tanisha.
Tanisha, then Lakeisha, then Ray.
Was it? I missed it. Okay. Okay.
Was it Tanisha?
Tanisha. It was Tanisha, unless she changed her mind, and then Lakeisha, and then Ray.
Okay.
Tanisha, did you still want to speak?
Yeah, I was just saying, ooch, that was it.
You had to read.
That was so funny. I was like, oh my God, I gotta give me an ooch in my lunch. What time I'm gonna do that?
Real talk. Any future sex talks will be referred to as ooch. Next week, how to get more ooch in your life. I promise. It'll be something in summer. All right, it's summer. How to have a hot ooch summer.
All right, Lakeisha.
This is my last time chiming in, guys. The other thing that I wanted to add to is that people have to, since we're talking about intimacy, we have to be open and honest about how our bodies change. And this is not to make an excuse. Some women go through menopause, you know, in their early 40s. And that has a lot to do with your sex drive. Some men have, I guess like prostate issues, or let's just talk about medical issues where they're not able to perform. So I understand that intimacy is a big part of marriage or like a romantic relationship. And I understand that, but what happens when a person can't perform? And then it makes me think too about So I think the young lady that just spoke, I think her name is Britley. I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly. When she said about like trying to find time to, to be intimate with your partner, or when we were talking about, when we were talking about addressing the things when they occur. I think about people that are going to be empty nesters. So think about it. Somebody said you have your children and you have all these things that you have to do and that occupies your time. But what happens when you're an empty nester and your kids are gone and you're sitting there because you haven't poured into that marriage or that relationship? Now you're sitting there looking at the person. I think somebody said you have to want to or enjoy being around the person. You need to address those things early on so that they don't fester. And then when your children are gone from the home, gone to college, you're sitting there looking at each other like, well, what are we going to do? Nothing, because 10 years ago, we were just sitting around pouring ourselves into our children, which you should, but we should have also been pouring ourselves into our marriage. So I think there are a lot of things. We have to be open and honest about what we like in intimacy, in terms of like the physical act of it, but also being open and honest about how our bodies change, and those changes that occur, how it can significantly impact our, your romantic or your intimacy. People don't want to talk about those things. You want to do the act, but you don't want to talk about the act and the things that may be preventing you from having, participating in that act. So.
Yeah. I think that's dead on. That speaks to something, and where we're coming to. I think that speaks to again this kind of like instant gratification social mindset that we have, where it's like you have an understanding of liking what you like, and then when something changes, you don't roll with with what you have. You just go out and find another embodiment of that thing that you like, which is why when something lose or gain weight or something like that, and then they fall out of, they may slip a little bit out of the parameters of what the other person has some attraction for. They don't roll and find a new normal with that person. They just be like, oh, you're working out, you lost some gas, I'm gonna go find somebody around that. Like how I like it. Instead of working with the new ass that you got on your current partner. You know what I'm saying? So taking those things into consideration, taking those even down to the physical changes into consideration, hell yeah. It's something that has to be looked at, and if it's from a commitment perspective, it can't just be a jump out of jump ship, unless it's something that was really like on some arbitrary stuff, like if you just let yourself go, and I'm talking about men and you just let yourself go because of something that you did with this and third, and even with the other person trying to help and trying to invest with you, still doing something, that's something different. But if it's something medical, that's not something you like. Just be like, oh, you're going through this, I'm out. That's crazy. I just watched another thing with Kevin Samuels with some woman saying, for those of you that don't know about Kevin Samuels, this image coach that's been getting a lot of flack. It's been getting a lot of notoriety for his. He has a woman up there that left her husband who had cancer, and due to the extenuating circumstances around that, she bounced and then came to him like, well, how do I get a high value man? He's like, you left your dude for cancer. Like, what man is going to want you after hearing that story? Like, you did the whole sickness and health vow, you left him in sickness. What is you doing? So those are those things that do happen. And sometimes it's not even just things that are outside of our control. Sometimes it's the standards that we manufacture, and then when something falls out of grace from that, then we're like, we don't think to, some of us don't think to work through it. We just look to, get back, quote unquote, get back to where we were at, not necessarily the person that we got there with. So just wanted to put that out there. Ray, what you got first?
That was wonderful, and it happens a lot of the time. I know a lot of situations that has happened, but I just want to say, I want to ask the young lady Britt the question: I know she's a young lady. She's probably younger than everyone in the group. I want to know if marriage changes with the younger generation. Do they have the same definition as to what relationships are, or do they have their own definition as to what they want it to be? Or I don't really see a lot of younger couples that are like they go the distance. So I want to know if it changes from generation to generation. Are the younger kids talking about marriage? Is that something they want to do, or are they opposed to it?
I can't speak for the whole entire younger generation, but what I know particularly about my generation, there's that whole situationships, it's like really weird and awkward. I feel like they lost that concept. They're just like, they don't see it in sight. I don't know if they see it in sight anymore or like what they think about it. They're just like, it could be this, or, maybe I should just like, mess around a bit. It just seems to be all over the place, but the marriage has definitely seemed to stray because, for example, so like, let me give a good example. So for example, the media has recently reached a roadblock when there was a report that like J-Lo and A-Rod split, right? And then all of a sudden it's like probably memes from my generation or a younger generation, like, damn, like, if J-Lo and Alex split, like, there's no hope for us. Like, what? Like, I feel they, like, my generation per se has gotten really into comparison, so their mindset is really over the place, and we personally get so in depth of like what people will think or say, and it's just really weird because we end up tarnishing things before anything really happens. So I don't really see much hope with their views on marriage, if that answers your question.
Thank you for that.
So she's kind of saying like the facade of marriage, like they're not wanting, correct me if I'm wrong, Brittany, you're saying like younger people are more about what people see. Like that whole, like she said, J-Lo, like they're about that not the I don't know, like the image of marriage. Or like she said, even just want to have, I guess, like a physical connection and with different people, but not that commitment. Like I said earlier, like what is marriage really? It's like about commitment, about love, about, I think Renisha said, going the long haul, like not giving up and throwing in the towel so easily. And then I'm not mocking her or anything, but I am much older than her. Like for me, my vision of a marriage is like when you could see like, of course, like my parents or my in-laws, but like Claire Huxtable and, those types of people, like good times, or like when they would, stay together through the hard times and stuff like that. I don't know. When I look at these stars, for me, it's just like, it's all for show. When you really get down to it, like, are you guys really in for it if the person, like somebody said about the vows, doesn't have that $1 million or millions of dollars or the nice car and the fancy house? Like what happened, my husband and I, when we first got married, he had a pickup truck and the daggone passenger side door wouldn't open. But I liked him. He was a good guy, and he was working hard and he was going to school. And so, we've been together married 15 years and together for I think 26 years. I just saw something in him, and it didn't matter to me that he had, back that time was, I guess, I don't even know what type of cars they had back then because I wasn't paying attention to that stuff. I just saw something in him, and it wasn't anything about what he had, the latest fashion. Like for me, that stuff, even at my age now, it never really mattered to me. It just doesn't. I want somebody to love me, take care of me, take care of my household, be a good provider, console me, encourage me, have my back, tell me to buck up when I'm not, going, that extra mile to do what I need to do. And that's what I found in my mate. But I saw that, I feel in him before we were even married. You know what I mean? So, I don't know.
Head on.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think go ahead, Chad.
I was just going to say, just stressing to that point of how important it is to understand y'all's dynamic and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, definitely with you on that.
Yeah, and I also think, just to reiterate, as far as it seems as though as the generations go on, the less important the unity of marriage matters. Like, because if you think about our great grandparents, our grandparents, and even up to our parents, in some situations where they stayed longer, or even if they did get a divorce, like for our parents or grandparents or whatever, it was over a long extended period of time. It wasn't, we tried it for a year or two, it ain't worked, I'm just gonna bounce down. It was more, the work was put in. And I think as the time as the time went on, the divorce rate increased, and it's kind of like, why? Like, what? And I think too, it goes into the idea of everyone fantasizing about the ceremony, everyone fantasizing about being married and all that. Oh, this is my husband, and all that is hubby, this is wifey. But what about the union itself? Like, not people, and marriage may not be for everyone. And if it's not for you, that's fine. But if you take your vows and say, this is what I'm going to do, I'm going to live by these vows, I'm going to respect you, I'm going to respect our union, I think that, that part of it is somewhere along the line, it got lost. And I think that, including myself, like, sometimes we kind of bail out a little early. Like, you did something wrong, I'm just going to bail out now, and it's going to be okay, as opposed to working on the union that you put your vows to.
Very true.
Yeah.
Too true. Now, to the flip side of that coin, which will be what we finish out on. You do the work of understanding, so seeing and understanding the signs. You consider your options, and at the end of that, as opposed to seeing that there's something worth working towards, what do we do when, after all said and done, we realize this is not something that's healthy for us, or this is not something that's really worth pursuing? What do we do then? What's next after coming to that realization? Go ahead, Ray.
I say you bow out gracefully.
I think it's easier said than done for a lot of people, but yes.
And I can use myself for an example, because when I was married, I got married in 2015, divorced 2017. We were together, married for a year and a half, separated for 6 months before the marriage was finalized. During the year and a half we were married, we had constant counseling with our pastor, and we had sessions every 2 weeks or whatever. So towards the end of it, it got a little bit more. In that relationship, and I'm not saying I'm not to blame, because obviously I'm sure I had some part in that, but the respect of the relationship from his end went away. Like, it was just not there, like the things that he did. And we went to counseling, and I'm like, okay, we go to counseling once, this is the issue, this is what needs to be fixed, we need to work on it. Same issue came back up again in counseling. All right, now this is the last time I'm going to say, like, this is a problem for me, this is disrespectful. And it had a lot to do with not physical infidelity, not cheating, like sex or anything, but online and just talking to women, disrespect, and just being disrespectful to the relationship. And the second time we went to counseling for that particular problem, I sat there and I told him, I told the pastor, and I told the first lady all in that session, if this happens again, if I find that he's online, he's on dating sites, he's watching, pornography stuff that's not helping our intimacy in the relationship, I'm walking away, right? I'm going to walk away. And I looked at each of them in their eye, and I said that statement to each of them. If this happens again, I'm going to leave. Because at this point, it's not a matter of us not working on it. It's a matter of you still disrespecting our union and you don't want to fix it. Because if I came to you twice before and you're still doing the same exact thing that we talked about in counseling that you said you were going to fix, then you don't care. And I'm not going to be in a relationship where my partner doesn't care and doesn't want to work on it. Lo and behold, 3 months later, I found out he was doing the same exact thing. I then do research, come to find out this has been going on 30 days. It started 30 days after we said our dues. This was a year and a half in. So he's been doing this up until literally right after we said I do. And at this point, I'm like, I'm not going to sit here and stay in a relationship where I'm being disrespected. And I walked away. I chose to walk away. For me, I've never wanted to be a divorced person. Like, I got married in 2015, finalized my divorce in 2017. Nothing that I wanted on my resume, but hey, it is what it is. I'd rather be a divorced person than a person in a relationship that's miserable and disrespected. So to answer your question, if all else fails, bow out gracefully. Yep. Go ahead, Cook.
I agree that with Renisha and Nini that you bow out gracefully, but I think Chad said something like it's not always that easy. I think that when you have children, sometimes that could be a little bit of a sticky situation. So I have a girlfriend who divorced her husband, but they have 2 boys, and it was really difficult for her to make that decision. Like she straddled the fence for a very long time. She's like, I'm just not happy. So she finally made the decision that divorce was the best thing, because although she wanted her children to grow up in a household where there were 2 parents, she said me not being happy and just all the things that had happened in the marriage, it wasn't going to be the best thing for my boys. But like I said, she struggled with that for a very, very long time. So I think when you're a parent and you have very small children, or children, no matter what their ages are, that probably is a difficult thing, because you don't only have yourself to think about, you have to think about your children. And any child who experiences a divorce, I'm going to assume is impacted in some way. You may have one child that's impacted more than the other. You know what I mean? So you definitely have to, really think about the reason why you're leaving. And then other things like substance abuse, infidelity, domestic violence. Those are a lot of things that you have to, take into consideration. And some people, I've heard of this term called nesting, where they know they're going to separate, but they kind of stay I think it's called nesting. I may be wrong. They stay in the household together. They may have separate rooms because they have children. They want the children to still have both parents in the home. But then you're also, and this is just my personal opinion, I'm not knocking what someone says is best for their family, but don't you then teach your children an unhealthy way of being in a relationship? I mean, I guess that's for another, time to talk about, but, another podcast. But I just think it depends on you. If you feel like you just can't do it and your children are not seeing what a healthy relationship looks like, then you leave and you just can't take it anymore. Sometimes you may have a mutual agreement that we just can't get along, but you're going to be some awesome co-parents. You know what I mean? Like, co-parenting works. Yeah. You have 2 mature adults when people are not, holding on to grudges and things like that, and they're going to do the best for their children. So I think children play a big role in how you're going to exit.
I think that's a very, very, very solid point to make. I think when it comes down to making that choice to leave, it really does make a difference where you're at in the relationship. If there's somebody along the lines of like, where you're just, you're young and you're just starting out and so on and so forth, and maybe you don't have that much time in on the relationship, and then you realize that, maybe it's not healthy for them, or it's not healthy for you. It's easier for you to make that cut, have that talk and be able to cut and so on and so forth. For me, being 13 years in and then making that decision with 2 kids, with 2 young kids, my kids are only 9 and 7. There was a lot more to talk about, not even just between her and myself. There were conversations I had to have with my kids to have that discussion, because not And my daughter had something of an adverse reaction to her mom, where she was giving her all types of grief and attitude. Why? Come to find out, she had the mentality of mommy made daddy leave. And I love daddy, so I'm not feeling mommy right now. And we had to tackle that because that wasn't the truth. And we didn't need her adopting that narrative and having it take root and so on and so forth. So there is a lot. There is a world of difference in terms of where you're at, even if you're significantly in, years in. It's the level of what it takes to uproot can be directly, I think, attributed to how much time you had in. So however much skin in the game you have, it's going to take some time to get that skin out. So yeah, in quotes, I agree with Cookie. That's a teaching living in an unhealthy environment. Tried that too. When you said that, I was like, yeah, I tried that. I was a house husband for a while, where she was the one working and I was the one taking care of the kids, because let's be honest, daycare is a motherfucker to pay for. So I was working evenings and she would work during the day. I was working evenings and weekends and she'd work during the day. So I was literally taking care of the kids for almost 2 years. And it seemed like it worked, but at the same time, there's no ignoring the energy in the room. You know what I'm saying? There's no ignoring the level of bitterness or resentment, or just that distance that's in the face and stuff like that. And it wasn't fair to us, and it wasn't fair to the kids. So that's another one of those things that's just like you have to address. You can't just be like, okay, we made this decision and it's cool, and not take into consideration the short or long term effects of what it's doing to us or to the people that are around us. So yeah, Keisha, you said sometimes they internalize and blame themselves. I feel like that's something that I have to deal with as far as my son. My daughter went externally looking at mom like, you did this and so on and so forth. I think my son took on some measure of guilt about it because he hides and shit. And I've had to do that. I've had to address him. I've had to have talks with him on that as well. Like, this has nothing to do with you. Absolutely not. So, yeah, no, good. I'm pretty much done.
I saw your hand, Tanisha. I was just gonna say, it just as much as the impact that a divorce has on children, it has that same impact, obviously, in an unhealthy environment, because a lot of people, our grandparents and parents, stay together for the sake of the kids. But the sake of the kids they're growing up in an unhealthy environment. So that still has that same impact, whether it's a divorce or whether they're together in an unhealthy relationship. So I think when you do have children, you have to pay attention to that, because are they looking at my mom and my dad who don't show affection, so I'm not even sure if they even love each other, and then taking that, because we are, as parents, or not we, but you guys are, as parents, are the first portrait of what life and what love looks like to your children. So they're going to internalize that and say, okay, this is what my relationships are going to look like. So if I meet a person or a guy or girl who's emotionally unavailable because my dad was unavailable emotionally, then that's okay, because that's all I know. But if you see a person who they were separated, they co-parent well, and eventually, yes, you have some things to work through as well, but you have to pick, both are hard. Staying together in an unhealthy relationship is hard and detrimental, as well as separating and being divorced. So you have to choose your hard and what's best for the kid. Like I think it's a gray area there, but you have to choose your hard, whether you stay together or whether you separate, and whether it's a detriment to the kids. Choose your heart, but at some point you have to make a decision, I think.
Yeah,
I agree with you 100%, Nene. I agree with you 100% because you took it out of my mouth, took it out of my mind. When kids are growing up, they want their parents to stay together. All the children want their parents to be together. You have some children that don't have both parents in the home. So if you have a child that have both parents in the home, that's a sense of pride to that child. They want to see their parents together. However, during the time that a marriage may be going through their little rocky stuff, those children pay more attention than you know about what's going on. Those nights that you arguing, or you could be arguing with your spouse, or he's not talking and you're not talking. Those kids pick that stuff up, and it does impact their life a lot. It impacts their life when they're in elementary school. So they're around their other friends, they're talking about stuff. It impacts them when they get to the middle school because they're maturing a little bit, so they're learning more about, girls and boys. Then it impacts them a lot when they get in high school, because guess what? That's where it is when they are getting ready to find out if they want to start dating somebody of the opposite sex, and they start picking up patterns on what they think is normal and what they think is abnormal. Okay, and what I mean by that is, okay, if the dad don't communicate, but you like the girl, okay, your communication may be off if it's a boy. And it might be vice versa. The girl may not communicate with the guy because they're learning by watching what goes on in the house. And as time grow on, those kids may want those parents to stay together when they're small, but by the time they get into high school, I've had people tell me their children say, look, y'all need to just go ahead and separate. We already know. When it comes to that point, when your kids will come and tell the parents, I think y'all need to go y'all separate ways, you know it's gone. You can't hide anything. So even, I can't remember who said about co-parents staying in the home. Some people like would love this co-parent to stay in the home just to keep the family together. But okay, how far can you do that? If the love is gone and we co-parent and just staying in the house to keep the kids, if I want to date somebody else, I'm not going to disrespect my house by bringing somebody else in here because you in here. That's not going to even feel right. So what's the point of us staying in here? Is it because we trying to co-parent with the kids and we sleeping in separate rooms? They still seeing it. So what's the point? Why don't you go get your own place and I go get my own place? It's the same thing. Right. Or is it a financial thing that we still stand together? So sometimes when relationships break like that, it's more to it than what somebody is saying. That's why communication is really, really important. Because if we co-parent and stand in the house, I'm just saying it because somebody had mentioned it. If we co-parent and stand in the house, okay, so the communication we might be missing is, it's not that I don't think that you can stay in the house by yourself without these kids. I think the communication might be, maybe you can't stay on your own. So then that's become the point that we married, do we need each other? Do I need you so I can still stay? Or are we trying to do it for the kids? And that's when children become more active and they start talking and saying, you know what y'all doing? Oh, we're gonna stay together. I've seen a lot of people do that. We'll stay till y'all graduate. For what? You know, it's something to think about. One person may say, well, I'm so scared they're going to try to take you for child support. They're not going to take you for child support. I mean, they do. You know, communication is a big thing. But that's what I wanted to say about impacting, the relationship impacts kids a lot. Because when they get out here and get on their own, they're trying to figure out, they don't know how to do it the right way. Because as parents, we didn't, as parents, if we're parents, it's our responsibility to teach them how to be in a healthy thing, how to be in a healthy relationship. And if we feel that it's not healthy and toxic, we have to step back and say, wait a minute, now this is not only affecting me. How do I really want to see my daughter go through this? No. That's something you ask your spouse. Do you want to see a man treat your daughter bad like this? And you have to ask yourself as a woman, do you want to see your son treat a woman bad like this? Do you want to see a woman run over top of your daughter, run over top of your son? That's when it becomes real. Because we got to take ourselves out and say, look, these are our kids. This is what we have together. We might not have nothing else together, but these kids are what we have together. What do we think is best for them right now? Because this right here may not be working. That's just my take.
That's on point.
Yeah.
I've seen people talk about having marital exit interviews. like it's a job. Like, you know, what have you learned from this? What have you gathered from this? You know, what's been, you know, what part do you understand was on your end as far as the successful parts or the parts that failed? And they're able to do that, and they're able to have that walking away portion or that bowing out period really gracefully. So I'm definitely not saying that it doesn't happen. But there's a process to doing that on any level, really. It's definitely not just you know, up and downs, and that's, you know, and that's the end all be all of it. So doing all of that and then getting to the point where you guys feel like it's better to just not continue. I think everybody's really said it. Ray, you had something to add?
Oh no, I was just clapping for the lady that spoke before. She made great points. Thank you. Everyone has made wonderful points this evening. Thank you.
Not a problem. Appreciate it. And yes, everybody did make some damn good points this week. That will pretty much do it. If nobody has anything else to add, that will pretty much do it for tonight's TalkSpace. We want to say thank you to everybody that contributed. That's what the space is here for. Take whatever you need to take from this. You know, we say that every week. Because we mean it. You know, what's the topic next week? We get into that, right? People already chomping at the bit. What's it gonna be? We actually have something interesting for that. So I'll take my normal announcements real quick, and then we'll jump into that. And I'm not even going to be the one saying that. That's going to be because she needs to be the one saying it. But of course, for you guys, like, share, and comment. We are here on YouTube, as well as through Zoom calls. These calls are these weekly podcasts are placed on our YouTube channel, and you can find us. We'll put that link in the chat box here, you guys. So you can check out our past videos. That is also not only is that the new home for the weekly Wednesday chats, that is also the home of our Your Space reaction videos, where where Nini and I comment on current events or articles or other videos or other topics that you guys send to us or that we find ourselves. And as of this past week, we also uploaded our the very first episode of our monthly Soul Space Masterclass episodes, where we had a panel of very highly esteemed Black mental health professionals, and we got into it for a good hour and a half. It was only supposed to be an hour, but we got into it for a good hour and a half on mental health, how people address mental health in the Black community. So that was huge. That was super huge. You guys can definitely check that out. When I stop playing around and put this quote up, put this link up.
I put the quote.
Link. I meant link. Not quote.
For YouTube, it's him and her spaces on YouTube. That you can go there, and when he gets the link up there. Facebook, it's him and her spaces on Facebook. On Instagram, it's him_her_TalkSpace on IG. And then the email address, if you want to send us videos that you want us to do reactions to, if you have questions that you want just answers to, you can send that to him_and_her_talkspace podcast@gmail.com. So those are all of our spaces. And while he's getting that together, next week's topic. So next week's topic Next Wednesday, a week from today, is my birthday. All right. So as my birthday, I want anyone who's in this chat now who wants to give us a topic for next week to talk about. That's the topic we're going to go with. So whoever wants to throw out a topic for next week, that's the one we're going to go with. So we have not chosen one prior. We're going to give you the opportunity to whatever you want to talk about, that's what we're going to go with. So does anyone want to talk about anything, something that we talked about that you want to revisit to maybe do a part 2 of? Just let us know. You can do that now, or if you want to just send it to us in chat or whatever, however you feel you want to do it. But the first one gets done. Does anyone have any ideas, or you just want to send it to us?
I have loads of ideas. I'm going to send it to you.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
We're ready for it. Okay, yeah, my on my end, I'm not. My service is not letting me do anything right now. So, with that being said, appreciate you guys as always. Thank you for. Oh, there now we want to do it. Oh, trash behind the internet. Anyways, that will do it for us tonight here on TalkSpace. Again, thank you guys. We appreciate you guys every week for you coming in and making the space what it is. We're just the facilitators. It's really you guys that makes the space what it is, and we appreciate you guys for that. That being, I know it's mine. We'll fix it. Yep. But yeah. So on that note, you guys can we'll definitely get the link for it. Oh, wait. All right. Am I moving still? No. All right. Well, if you guys can still hear me, that'll do it. But yes, for next week, it's on y'all. It is on y'all what we were talking about next week. Okay, that's what the birthday girl wants. That's what the birthday girl's going to get.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. But you guys, again, you guys have a wonderful night, and until next week, we will see you on Him and Her TalkSpace, where, as always, we have 2 coaches,
1 space, and 0 reservations.
0 reservations.
Yay! Great topic, guys. Thank you.